Scott, but I think he'll probably show up here when he gets a chance to get away from the bell ringing thing. But we have a quorum. We have Don, Glenn, John, and myself. And I'd like to get approval of the minutes of the previous meeting we had.
So, move.
Okay, it's been moved. Any a second?
I'll second.
Okay, been moved and seconded to adopt minutes of the last meeting. They're in the book here and look fine to me. I don't know, does anybody have any additions? Oh, there he is. Hey, Scott.
Hey, Scott.
Hey, Scott.
We'll give you just a sec to look over them real quick. I'd like to welcome our new Harbor Board members, Don Spiegelmeyer and Scott Newman. Bob Martin is at a Sarah meeting. And who else?
Dolan is in Mexico.
Oh, yeah. So we got one on vacation, one at a different meeting. So we still have a quorum, so we can go ahead with this. So do you have any issues with the minutes of the last meeting? I'd entertain a motion to accept approval of the minutes.
Accept approval of the March 10th, 2017 meeting minutes.
Okay, it's been moved to approve them. Second.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and second to approve the minutes. All those in favor respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay. I'd like to ask if there's anything we want to add to the agenda, and I'd like to have the motion to use the agenda as a guideline so that if we do come up with some other issues, we can vary from the agenda. So if we adopt the amendment or adopt the meeting agenda, we should do it as a guideline.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to also add something to the agenda. Should I do that up front, or?
Yep, you can do it right now.
Okay. And I would move that we move the Tiger Grant application for Scow Bay is in a discussion item. I move that we put it into new business so the board could take action on it if they so choose.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved to move the Tiger Grant application from discussion item to new business. Does anybody have any issues with that? Okay, all those in favor of moving it to the new business, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thanks, John.
One other change, and that's to add, as a discussion item, establishing a mission statement for the Harbor Board. And I'll group three things together: a mission statement, and then discuss frequency of meetings, and third would be a maximum length for meetings. And that would be...
I don't know if as an advisory board we necessarily have to have a mission.
We don't, but they're usually good to have. Kind of narrows your focus.
So you want to list those under new business?
No, under discussion.
Oh, under discussion.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it'd just be something to discuss, along with frequency of meetings, basically to have more, and to not have them drag on too long, maybe set a time limit on them, and anything that goes beyond a certain time could be carried over to the next meeting.
Okay. Anybody else have anything they'd like to add or move? Yeah, Jeff?
Mr. Chairman, under board discussion items, I'd like to have just a brief conversation about replacing some of the benches in the North Harbor, overlooking the North Harbor. Lorraine and I have talked about it a little bit, but I wanted to hear what the board thought. Under discussion items.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any other items that we would want to add to the agenda? Okay, I'd entertain a motion to accept the agenda as amended as a guideline.
So move.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda as a guideline as amended. Okay, are there any visitors' views unrelated to the agenda? Hearing none. Visitors, oh, Dave.
Yeah.
You can come up and just sit up here if you'd like.
Thank you. I didn't hear anything today on the agenda about the use of the drive-down dock facility for use by other users other than the fleet. And I just wanted to speak to that a little bit because of, especially related to considering having a tax on, your consideration of having a tax for cruise ship passengers. I think that we need to make our port inviting as possible to the users that come on these small cruise ships. We've used the drive-down dock successfully last year for the American Cruise Line when their ships came in, and we also used it on some days where we didn't have conflict with American Cruise Lines with the Lindblad boat, the Quest. In the coming years, we're going to see more vessels about the size of the Quest, and I'd like to see the drive-down dock used for most of these vessels when it's possible. We know what their schedule is. That schedule can be published to the community, to the fleet, to the users, so that they can look it up on their iPhone and see when there's a ship scheduled there. It also gives, it leaves, if we're using the outside dock for tour ships, we have 2 inside berths that are available for for the fleet to use, to be able to come down and continue to use it. We also have to remember that originally money for the drive-down dock came from a fund from the state, passed down from the state, that was originally cruise ship head tax money. And so that provided a substantial amount of money to make that drive-down dock possible. Using the drive-down dock gives us the convenience to handle trash and deliver stores and get people off and on the vessel. Petromarine can even deliver fuel down there on a limited basis. It also frees up the Petromarine dock for the fishing fleet to be able to go over there and get fuel whenever they want to. I believe that with the publishing of that calendar online would give all users the ability to kind of plan their day and decide, okay, well, I can get in there this morning. Can't plan to get in there this afternoon, so that's pretty much my view on that.
What kind of time frame are you talking about having this ship tied up there?
Generally, the Lindblad boats come in the afternoon from about 1 p.m. to 7 p.m.
So you're talking like 6 hours?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. American Cruise Lines typically is here longer. They typically arrive about 7 o'clock in the morning and stay off until midnight. The harbor staff has been very accommodating in providing that opportunity for the American Cruise Lines to stay there. Their boat this next year is going to be a little larger and carry 175 passengers rather than 100, as the American Spirit has had.
From the harbor staff side of it, what problems do you foresee?
Well, the way we went about it is we threw out to the travel or the cruise ship industry certain dates. We said, let's see, last year, let's do a trial run and see how it works. And it worked pretty good. The way we operated this last year was we gave them kind of open access to it on Thursdays, because that's traditionally the day that the fleet is out. So they booked a lot of Thursdays. And I'm speaking more so of the Quest, the American Cruise Line, the Quest booked for Thursdays. And then the way we left it is we're going to just, as the dates come up, we will know better what the fleet is up to. So therefore, if they contacted us the day or even a couple of days prior to arriving, I would give the blessing or say, no, it's not going to work, depending on what was happening with the fishing fleet. Because, as we know, we go from a Sunday fishery to a Thursday fishery to maybe a 2-day or 2-day on, 2-day off type of thing. So that seemed to work pretty good. I think what Dave's speaking to more is just onset from the beginning of the schedule in the spring, then they would know they would have that day. And, that really will, become a burden for the harbor. It gets to be, we do a lot of, defending this to the fleet, because they're trying to use it, of course. What ends up happening a lot is that the inside first spaces get a little compromised in that the support that's coming down to the tour ship ends up taking up the platform, the parking for this and that and the other thing. A lot of the times there would be charter vessels that would come and tie up on the inside, and so that they could pick their pedestrians, to pick the people up off the boat. So it turns into using the entire facility a lot of the time, sometimes not, especially if a boat is there prior to the tour ship getting there, then they kind of have their space. But there were a lot of times where we had to go down and, tell the people that, to play nice and all that kind of stuff. So I do have a little bit of a concern about this new American Constellation. She's going to be considerably larger. I don't know how that's going to work. I haven't seen it tie up. I've heard from the crew, I've heard from Dave that it's going to work perfectly. But that being said, we have the entrance to the South Harbor on the north end. That is, it's fairly narrow, coming and going, and there's a lot of activity coming and going from the launch ramps and the grid and the north, or the south of the harbor, A and B floats. And then to the south of this drive down, we have a very narrow opening there with the airplane float. So we can't encroach on their territory either. So this vessel's going to be 270 feet, 275 feet. How big was the Quest is 220?
That sounds about right.
So I think it's 50 feet more, which is going to have to go to the north rather than the south when they go to tie up. So anyway, that's just something to caution us about. I've proposed to just kind of do it like we did last year. I'm opening up Mondays and Thursdays kind of at the beginning, and then kind of leave it as if the place can handle it. If we don't have a lot of activity from the fleet, then yeah, let's let the cruise ship tie up there. So, unless you want to turn it into cruise ship dock, for the summer. Right now, there's about, last year, you can see on your, I think we're jumping ahead here, but on the tour ship report from last year, you could see that there were 39 stops at Petro. The rest were down in the loading zone of the South Harbor. So, it's 40 stops of summer.
Seeing those 38 stops at Petro, that's half the same season. So a lot of times, when there's a cruise ship at that dock, there's also a bunch of boats that need fuel. And, and I've said this for years and years, we lease that dock to sell fuel and lubes for everybody, to everybody. But what's going on, back when Cruise West was in town, Cruise West would come in and try to deal with them that they would come in, but they would only stay for 4 hours and then leave. And then I could schedule tenders and the fishing fleet in to use that dock. Well, now these cruise ships, they want to stay longer. They want to stay 8 hours, 12 hours, and there's more of them. There's 38 last year, which, like I say, that's half as many days as the whole seine season. And, we got to sell fuel. So, what we need to do as a community is find a place for these cruise ships. And years ago, and I think we even talked about it when I was on the harbor board, we need to set a dolphin up towards the ferry terminal, I believe, for the cruise ships. If there's nowhere else to go, we got to have some for the cruise ships, because every other community in Southeast has something for them. And they like to drive down. I know every one of them, they love that drive down.
Fleet loves to drive down, too.
Well, I know, but,
It's popular.
also the fleet is out of
It's-
town in the summer,
yeah.
too. I
Yeah.
mean, it's, we got to work it out so everybody
Well-
can use it.
Yeah, and
We
that,
can't.
just to follow up on, the ideal, again, we've done the price tag, and so who's gonna pay the money for the only place I can go is to raise money. And so you think they would, the cruise ship industry could absorb the $250,000 that it's gonna take to do the Dolphin somehow in the next 5-10 years? Maybe, maybe not. We haven't really broached them with those kind of rate increases.
So what would we do with the cruise ships then? I mean, if Petra Marine says,
Well,
We can't have the cruise ships at that
realistically-
dock.
Well, realistically, that's the port dock.
well, we lease
You leave the port.
7/8 of
Yeah,
it,
yeah. So let's put
all but 25 feet, we lease to sell people
right,
in lieu.
and so maybe you need to lease the whole thing and then run it.
We don't need the whole thing. We're
Well,
not a cruise ship dock.
I don't know, maybe we need to,
Well, have you guys looked at Ocean Beauty? I mean, they're not using that at
I was
all.
thinking Ocean Beauty too the other day.
Ocean Beauty's got a float that they could use for, the charter people.
We have approached them about using their facility before, and I haven't done it in the last year. And previously, it's been off limits. They haven't wanted people transiting their dock facility. It doesn't mean that they would
Hell,
change their mind.
last year they leased it. That might be an option,
But if we did use Petra Marine, or excuse me, Ocean Beauty, then the harbor would lose the revenue associated with the cruise ships. One thing about revenue, if we're talking about raising revenue for a Dolphin, for instance, we're talking about some sort of, cruise ship head tax, or whatever we want to call it, user fee. That is the type of thing that we could see those fees going to as a benefit to the industry that pays for them, that pays those taxes. I think that with some creative scheduling, we can take the fishing operators, the charter fishermen that are certainly part of the community. We can load them, take their passengers over by van over to the South Harbor, to another dock, and they don't have to be loaded there, to eliminate some traffic. And I think we can be a little more user-friendly to the inside berth users by communicating with our operators, our bus drivers, and other people, other vendors that come and can park, on half of the dock rather than, being on the other side. So we're not looking to use the dock the whole year. We're only looking for a portion of each day, not even every day during the summer. It's something that could be very well scheduled. It seems like, Monday and Thursday every other week for Lindblad, for instance. And Close Drive, we're not sure what we, can do with the Constellation from American Cruise Lines when it comes in and how it's going to fit on that dock. The alternative is for them to go to Anchor and for them to shuttle their passengers in, which causes its own troubles. One thing we noticed that with the Quest at Petra Marine Dock last year is that they could not safely unload their passengers from the ship to get them off. The portion that we can legally use to stay within security is that area, near the cement portion, away from the headers, away from where the fuel operations are. And so the Quest decided, okay, we can take people off of the stern and put them in their Zodiacs and take them off. Well, that turned out to be very hazardous, except at slack water, which as you know, doesn't happen very often around here. So they would come in at, as early as 10, 11 o'clock in the morning and have to stay on board until, 2 o'clock when they could set their gangway. So there are some issues with, tying up the Petra Marine dock for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, realistically, we don't have a ideal spot. We have far from ideal landing for the cruise ships. I mean, just mixing, we did, upgrades to the crane dock so that we weren't, lifting seine skiffs over people's heads. I mean, it's just, there's no part of it that is ideal. And, I mean, I feel for Bob, and we tried to, there were many times where they'd go tie up, get their fuel, or do whatever for a few hours at Petro, and then they'd come over to the drive down. Or we offered that up. I don't know how many times that happened, but we certainly offered it
Yeah,
up.
and it was when the fleet was in town.
Yeah,
in which
and we worked
Yep.
together, and I felt like it went okay. Now, that being said, maybe spending $250,000 to put in a Dolphin is just spending good money after bad. Maybe we do need to look at, and I've heard the rumors that Ocean Beauty's for sale. Maybe as a community, we look for, that as an option, or I don't know where else. There just isn't. I mean, I could say Sea Float, which is probably better for the cruise industry, other than they have a half a mile walk to the beach, but it's a nice landing float and all of that kind of stuff. But then we've displaced, tenders and all of the larger yachts that come to town. That's the only place we have to tie up. So, yeah, as we grow one group, the other group has to compromise or give up, or however you see it. I don't know what to do. I feel like we're caught between a rock and a hard place. It's a busy tourist season, but it's also the busiest time of our fishing fleet as well. And, if you're going to, you're going to look at the revenue that's going to be generated from, as we get further into this discussion on the agenda, you can see the revenue that's generated from head tax, depending on what you're going to charge them, $5 a head or $100 a head. It can go up and down. I know that in the last 13 years from raw fish tax, we have collected into the harbor $5 million. We've also collected into the general fund $5 million. So that's the kind of numbers that you get, from that group that wants to pay to play in our harbor. All of those funds have gone to, generate maybe niceties towards the fishing fleet, because they're coming to the table with millions of dollars. At best, you look again in your agenda, the packet includes the recoup of last year's 2017, and we had 108 stops, which is not any more than it's ever really been. Last year it was 93, a couple years ago it was 110. It's always been in the last 20 years about that much, 100 stops. One boat falls off and a new one kind of takes place. It's been back and forth. So that's kind of the numbers we have to play with there. And if we have max capacity, you're looking at best 6,000 passenger. So times that by $5 a head, $10 a head, you're still talking peanuts, unless you get into $100 a head, or, it's just, so it's hard for the staff to justify these big expenses. Again, in your packet are ideas of the passenger fee project list, everything from toilet paper to the public restrooms at $3,000 a year, all the way up to ADA compliant ramps of $1.6 million. It's going to take you a lot of annual, $5 a head to get anywhere close to providing, at least from the harbor's perspective of making a difference, and the head tax thing, if we're talking about that, I feel should go to Main Street or go where the bed tax goes. The harbor has a vehicle to raise the money, and that's called moorage. And I don't think that money should directly come to the harbor if you generate, if you impose this head tax. I think it should come to the community, and then we can look at some of these hard questions of this industry that, we want to grow and we want to encourage. I'm in the business of tying boats up. Bring them on, let's tie them up. But, it's just that, maybe it's a bigger conversation.
Brian, did you have?
Just one quick comment, this coming year may not be the ideal year to see what sort of thing you might have with the issue with the drive-down dock. You're looking at pretty severe fishing restrictions, fairly potentially poor pink salmon year. Of course, how many tenders you're going to have running around here. Boats are liable to be in the harbor longer than they have been. I mean, it's an even year coming up and a poor one at that potentially. So it could just be, just a little bit of a, what do you call it, a warning or whatever, that you might not actually see what you may really run into in a really big year. So there's some things that might, give us maybe a false sense of security, this coming year on some of the stuff. And I guess, having been one of the people that takes these people around, on the trips, I know that we've had some issues with coordinating people down on the drive-down dock, trying to hurt them, whatnot. That's kind of partially our fault and whatnot. And, the services coming down there, sometimes people don't know to get out of the way and we have to kind of move them around. But, comment on this user fee, if there's a concern that the people might balk at paying something extra for their trip, I think is ridiculous. In fact, kind of dealing with a lot of these people, I think a lot of them would probably think we were crazy not to have a head tax. They love it here. They really like it here. And I think they, would be, I personally, of course, I could be dead wrong too, but I think personally they'd be really, the people themselves, visitors, would be supportive of something like this. I don't think there'd be any problem. But addressing where this goes to, I've heard both sides of it, going to the general fund or going to the harbor. As long as it probably goes towards, concerns the tourist industry, but oftentimes with the cruise ship industry, when you do something for them or do something for the fishing fleet, you're doing it for each other. It benefits everybody. And I look now at Scow Bay as a big deal that potentially in the future could solve a lot of problems. But it's a long way. I'm probably not going to be around when that thing gets done. But it's something to look forward to, and how you might want to put money forward or set money aside for some of these projects. But there's right now there's immediate needs. But, some things you need to look in the future and make sure that it isn't furthered away if you use that terminology. But anyway, I just think that, I guess now my thing would be how much would you charge for something like that. But, I think that's kind of up to you guys and the council and whatnot to deal with that one.
Yeah, John, did you have something you wanted to?
I was going to ask what the face length is of the drive-down dock. 200. 200? Okay, that's all.
Filings on
And so there's a lot of,
180.
the largest vessels you're talking about are 280?
Yeah.
280, okay, thank you. It would be good if we had a drawing on there and we could superimpose some of these vessels and so forth in a future conversation.
Matilda Bay hanging off the end.
Yeah, yeah.
But right now, the longest vessel we've had have been like 200,
Yeah,
and then you're talking another 85 feet.
another Matilda Bay hanging off.
See, but the port dock's only 175.
Yeah, Jeff? Do you have?
So, Mr. Chairman, so does putting a dolphin at the end of the Petro dock, does that take the pressure off the drive-down dock? Or is that just an additional spot? I guess I'm trying to figure out if you put a dolphin
Well,
out
Dave
there.
would probably want to, probably additional spot. I mean, and the reality is you probably campaign for another boat to come through.
So has there been any discussion with the cruise ships about putting a dolphin in and having the cost of the dolphin to be distributed amongst the cruise ships over a 20-year period of time?
I mean, not real conversations Bob and I have talked. So we're doing the thing.
Kurt?
Chairman. So we talked about putting this dolphin in before. I can't remember exact distance off the end of that dock that we would be heading south with the dolphin. Now we'll be encroaching into the Coast Guard's now. So how far can they go off of that?
50 feet.
well, 50 feet, so 175 and 50 feet, probably 225. You got a boat that's 275.
Oh, yeah, no,
We're
you're
not
not,
going
I
to
mean,
leave room for the Matilda Bay to get in there so I can get fuel behind that ship, you know, not with the way the tides run there at times, you know.
Well, that's how it is now.
You know, yeah, so.
With these ships. I mean, people can't come into the float very safely when there's a ship parked at the fuel dock.
I want to take that chance.
Yeah.
it's less than ideal, you're gonna be.
And I know, like, tenders, our problem is, I believe tenders, when they see a ship there, and that ship's there all day, most of them call us, but some probably don't, that want fuel, but they go right on by, because they're just on the move. They're going by, they're not gonna call and say, well, the cruise ship's here till 8 o'clock tonight, we'll get you after the ship leaves. No, we'd like to get it now, so we'll just head on, the tide's right, we'll head south and we'll get it somewhere else. So I know we've lost business over the years having, and like I said, in the past with Cruise West, I always had a deal with them and they got the majority of their fuel from us, so it wasn't that big of a deal, but they always left within 4 or 5 hours. It was pretty much set in stone with them to use that dock, to use the fuel dock for a cruise ship dock.
So it really does sound like that this community really needs to start embracing the concept of where can we put our cruise ships.
If we want to grow this, if we want to grow this more, I think if there's somewhere for them to go, there's going to be more coming, is what I think.
Yeah, I believe we need to grow this.
And right now, we can't have a cruise ship at the dock 7 days a week, 8 hours a day. I mean, we
Hey, I know.
can't do that.
I hear you.
Well, it's obvious it's going to be an ongoing problem, and we just got to think outside the box, I think, and try to come up with some remedies that'll work for everybody, because we got to share this, all the stuff.
And then right now, it didn't help you
And
that-
see,
right.
yes, and I was just going to say
Okay.
that. We worked together well enough where it did help, and it was good, because, I don't know how many times, 7, 8 times, there was
Yeah,
probably a
we
ship
had
at the
11
drive down.
scheduled at the drive
Yeah.
down last year.
So,
And I got American Constellation, here's this 18, and it's another dozen stops, and we're gonna try it, I
Okay.
hope,
and another thing, what we did, they'd come to the port dock, get their fuel, and then if we had another customer, like a tender or another cruise ship that needed to come in, I would call the harbor department, and that cruise ship could go over to the drive down, so we could get another boat in.
Okay, well, this is going to be an ongoing conversation, I'm sure, but for right now, you have a comment, Scott, and then we'll move along.
I mean, I'm new to the board, and all this information is new. Of course, I'm from here, know the situation very well, flat flow plains. But is there a long-term solution to Scale Bay? I mean, we're looking at it right there. Has that been discussed for
You bet, yeah. No.
Probably a lot of history on
That's what my 2 cents about Scow Bay is, we're working with the Corps of Engineers, I'm trying to get a basin out there. If we have a new harbor, all of this stuff can be, in the planning, go into the planning of putting in a new harbor. That's really what we need, a big harbor, that maybe will displace people from the north end here of the island, opening up more opportunity for tie-ups downtown, or making that a Coast Guard and a cruise ship place out there.
Yeah, because if we're talking, I mean, more cruise ships, more people, that drive-down dock, sometimes there are so many people on that thing. I
Well,
think
and I
there's a serious liability issue.
Just to bring it back to really what we're talking about, there really hasn't been an increase in the, in the tour ship business over the last 20, 30 years. I mean, boats come and they go, but we've always had about 100 stops. I don't know if there's, a lot of times when one goes belly up, they say, oh, it's been saturated and, it's been explored. But then somebody else comes along and takes up the slack, and so I don't really know if it is something like we build it and they'll come type of thing. We'll never be able to get a big tour ship in here
Right.
because of the narrows. Maybe we could tie that Bremen up. That was a 450-footer that anchored out the last couple of years. But I don't think they're going to be running weekly tours through. They're going to come through once or twice a year. We could build a $12 million facility for their 1 or 2 stops a year. I just don't know about the future.
Well,
We
it
always
seems,
say it's growing, but so far.
well, they're kind of like growing in size, though. Now we're getting longer ones, and maybe that's going to be the way they make these shallow draft,
And they
longer
all
ones.
were on Marshall sale down in the, at Fisherman's Terminal 10 years
Yeah.
ago.
There have been some additions to the fleet. I know that Lindblad is building another vessel that won't be here in 18, it'll be here in 19, sister ship to the Quest, called the Venture. So Lindblad will have 4 vessels.
And National Geographic just built a new boat last year, right?
What's that?
Wasn't National Geographic just built a new boat last year?
The Quest was new this last year and started coming in late
They had
July.
more people?
And, and this year they're scheduled from roughly May 1st to the mid-September on a weekly call. Something else that's happened is on cruise is having their Safari Quest turn in Petersburg here. So those people will be arriving and staying in hotels, getting on the ship the next day, going out for a week, coming back here and departing from here also.
Is that new?
That's-
Is that new for this year?
That's new. Yeah.
That'll be nice. That'll be a reflection of 30 years ago when we had, the Sheltered Seas would turn here. That's where we came from. Is the Sheltered Seas really doing a service for our community when they would start and stop here and people were staying in hotels and all that.
Brings a lot to the community.
That was
Yeah.
a huge thing, and then that went away.
So we're talking, I'm stepping into my float plane pilot concern here now, that I hear this information, that's new information to me about a larger vessel tying at the drive-down ramp. So we're talking about a 285-foot vessel this next summer.
I tried.
275, 10 feet will make a big difference. Just by an inch, it's by a mile.
Yes. I can't go any closer than the dock itself, by law, to the airplane float. So it all has to come out of the harbor side of it.
So it's all going to be on the harbor side, on the north harbor side. So it won't encroach any farther.
Yeah, no, because we're already on that border.
On the, it's like 135 feet or something.
Yeah,
Is that what it is?
whatever it is, 100.
Okay, well, I think in order to get through this agenda, we're going to have to carry on this conversation at other times, and I think it's good that we get together and talk about it, because maybe somebody will come up with some ideas that we could use to solve some of the problems. But maybe Petro will just buy a Dolphin.
Oh, yeah. Why not? We'll just have to jack the fuel costs up.
Anyway, okay, so that was the visitors' views related to the agenda. And we'll get back at discussing it a little bit more. Yeah, John?
Okay. Are you on, where are we?
Visitors' views related to the agenda.
I ask to be temporarily excused from the board here so I can sit in the audience and speak from the audience on a subject related to the agenda.
Okay, do you want to wait until we get to that
Nope.
part of the agenda?
Nope.
Okay.
I need to do it now.
Okay, if that's what you would, go ahead.
Thank you. Stuff together.
I don't know if you literally need to do that, John, because you've got
You-
a microphone right
Yeah, you can just use it, just change hats.
I feel more comfortable not in here because I have a financial interest in what I'm going to be talking about, and I want to be in the audience
Okay,
if that's acceptable.
okay.
Thank you.
What's your pen?
Thank you. My name is John Murgis. I represent myself, my business, Island Ventures LLC, doing business as Petersburg Marine, and I'm representing my employees as well. I know you have a full agenda, so I'll try to be as brief as I possibly can. I apologize for its length, but this is life or death for my business, its employees, and the many marine service providers who are dependent on it. The Scout Bay Turnaround is an important port facility of the Petersburg Borough. It is actively managed by the Petersburg Harbor Department and is in the purview of this Ports and Harbors Advisory Board. I feel you need to have factual information concerning the turnaround. No hype, just straight facts. The Petersburg Borough Tiger Grant application to U.S. Department of Transportation that you have in your packet is a public document from the Petersburg Borough, not from PEDC. It is the first release of information of the actual plan of operation for the proposed approximate $7 million project. To be upfront, I supported the concept of the plan, although I have always felt that plan scope and $7 million price tag was extravagant no matter who pays for it. My letter of support is attached to the document. It is one of only 2 letters of support. In the present tense, I no longer support the project because as it is unfolding, it no longer collaborates with all parties, including the Harbor Board. My goal is to simply carry on with my haul-out business as we have done for 10 years. This is our 10th anniversary. We encourage and welcome competition. It would be comforting to know if we had any equipment failure, a competitive business could save the day for a vessel owner, and of course, we would do the same for the competitor. We would strongly oppose any restricted access or tariff or penalty fees imposed on vessel owners who chose to use our facilities instead of the proposed new borough facilities. I'm going to pass out here. I only have 4 copies of this. You might have to share. I think it'll go around. And I'm going to cite the different things that are highlighted in here that I wish to address. Yeah, if you could just pass it out.
Just give it to the board members.
My complaints, some of them severe, are not aimed at any one person or persons or group or committee. The author is merely the messenger. The author of the grant request is doing the best that he can to meet their job descriptions and job bosses' directions. In this case, the mission is to get grant money at any cost, take no prisoners. My guess, the strategy being used to get grant money is to make the turnaround and the businesses that operate there very publicly look like they are in shambles. Most of the text of the grant request from the Petersburg Borough points out the deficiencies of the present facility and benefits of the proposed $7 million improvements. Many, possibly most, are simply wrong. I highlighted with a yellow marker your copies of the grant that I feel are in error. Throughout the grant, there are several statements saying that the facility is abandoned, is in serious disrepair, is beyond its useful life, is used only occasionally to transport commercial vessels, is redundant, is virtually non-productive. I won't take up your time arguing the individual statements other than to say all are incorrect. Simply look at the photo that's up here, or better yet, go out there and observe. Earthworks are not fragile. The present condition has not deteriorated an iota in the last 10 years that I have been actively using it, and has considerably improved with minor maintenance and infrastructure improvements. With moderate improvements, the site can meet environmental regulations, particularly the EPA ADEC multi-sector general permit for stormwater discharge. Keep in mind, the Petersburg Borough is supposed to have the same stormwater permit for all of its industrial operation sites. According to ADEC, it does not have any stormwater permits. There is no mention of the many businesses, jobs, livelihoods, and that the facility presently supports. No mention of its present economic importance to Petersburg. There is no mention of its key importance to the commercial fishing industry other than to say the ramp is, quote, occasionally used to transport vessels, unquote. In 2016, my business had 232 one-way transports across the ramp, mostly commercial vessels up to 40 ton and 50 feet length. 217 is expected to be higher. The narrative says boats can be hauled only with an 18-foot tide. We haul with as little as 10 feet. The grant request says we can haul only one vessel per tide. We regularly haul with two trailers, 3 vessels per tide, and have launched as many as 6 per tide. Let me see if I can find the right photo here. Not good at this.
Maybe go backwards. Your other photos backwards down there at the, there you go.
Thank you. Anyway, you can see that's a typical scene for us throughout the year, especially in the summer months. We can transport more, but there is not a demand for more. The narrative says only one vessel per time can be serviced at the site. Our small leased area can accommodate up to 9 vessels, up to 50 feet. The non-leased area, which is open for leasing by anyone, can accommodate an additional 30 vessels should there ever be a need for that many. The narrative implies vessel accidents have occurred at the turnaround and that it is becoming increasingly unsafe. I have insurance. There have been 0 claims in my 10 years of operation. I am not aware of any accidents nor fuel spills at the site. Hydraulic trailer operations are inherently safe compared to other transport systems. The target for the proposed Petersburg Borough facility totals an estimated 410 local vessels. Those same vessels are targeted by both Petersburg Marine, my business, and Piston and Rudder. The grant request states that all 410 of those vessels would have to go to another community if the proposed $7 million facility is not built. Those 410 vessels would not have to go out of town. They would simply continue to be serviced by both Petersburg Marine and Piston and Rudder as they always have been. The narrative states almost all local vessel maintenance occurs in the water on tidal grids, implying there are no dry land facilities. For over 10 years, Petersburg Marine has been providing dry land vessel services in compliance with environmental best management practices, including contained and treated washdown services. The grant request does not mention that Petersburg Marine and Piston and Rudder even exist. There is much wording in the Borough document stating there presently is inadequate capacity with present local businesses to handle the targeted 410 vessels. On a monthly average, my business has never run at more than 50% capacity. You'd have to ask Piston and Rudder, but I guess they would be much the same. Of course, there are always individual days prior to commercial openings when everyone is temporarily plugged, usually for no more than 24 hours. The narrative diverts into personal allegations, which is very difficult for me to discuss, but I have no choice. On page 17, the Borough asserts my operation is, quote, the makeshift facility in Scow Bay. Does that stuff look makeshift? I don't think it is. There's no reason, no details why it is, quote, makeshift. Since beginning business 10 years ago, I have invested over $1 million in new equipment to ensure safe and efficient operations. Until this grant request was publicized, we were well underway with design and financing of a third trailer with an estimated $500,000 price tag. But most disturbing is the sentence in the grant request, quote, while some launching and hauling is currently occurring at Scow Bay, the operation is running on borrowed time. Unquote. There is no reason given why my business is on borrowed time. I don't know if it's an impending lease termination, denial of access to the ramp, whatever. The next sentence gives generalized subjective opinions which I previously addressed. Those opinions with no supportive facts are designed to sell the project in order to obtain grant money. There is no regard to causing harm to a successful local business. No matter what the reason, no matter how just the borough feels, the sentence is inappropriate, threatening, humiliating to me, my employees, and Petersburg vessel owners. I didn't know this document was on the internet until 3 days ago when one of my customers contacted me and asked, hey, what's going on here with going out of business stuff? So for the rest of my life, I'll be burdened with trying to mitigate this borrowed time statement to present and future potential customers, loan officers, employees. The borough's management plan in the document includes a marine service provider to manage the operation. The plan implies any vessel owner who used the ramp would have to pay fees for the new ramp, washdown, trailer, storage, and workspace. So if a vessel owner preferred to use my facilities instead of the borough's, he or she would have to pay fees for the borough's facilities even if they did not use them. To compete, I would have to offer my services at no charge, which of course I could not afford to do. So that would eliminate me as a competitor, possibly eliminate my entire business, likely increasing costs to the vessel owner. The borough states discussions are underway with private sector for management, and that if no private manager was found, the harbor department would manage the facility. There appears to be no opportunity for either public or harbor board participation. So where do we go from here? I don't know. I supplied the requested letter of recommendation, and a few days later got hit with a declaration of war. I'm stunned, confused. I think the Petersburg Borough should correct the incorrect statements. It is the right thing to do. If we as a community are willing to forego the truth for the sake of obtaining grant funds, it's time for a reset. All I want to do is continue my passion of safely and efficiently hauling the commercial fishing vessels of Petersburg. Those vessel owners are my family. They have supported me for 40 years, and I have been in the marine business and want to say thank you by supporting them. I think this harbor board needs to be more authoritative with the Scow Bay project. I'm certain that if any one of us were involved in the planning of the project that has taken place since the two only public meetings, the management plan and associated grant requests would be more accurate and respectful to all parties. I think it is absolutely paramount that all future planning and development be done in an open meeting atmosphere, including reasonable advance notice of meetings with agendas, with public participation encouraged. I hope when this advisory board addresses Scow Bay in tonight's agenda, someone will make a motion to the effect requesting the borough manager ensure the Ports and Harbor Advisory Board be included in any future developmental discussions and plans for the Scow Bay project. I don't think it necessary to have joint meetings requiring quorums. Perhaps single or multiple representatives would be adequate. I have a financial interest in the project, so I may not be allowed, I'm not allowed to make any motions or even vote on it. Lastly, borough staff needs to arrange a financial study that ensures full disclosure of true costs and sustainability of the Scow Bay project. It must be factual without the subjective opinions presently in the borough grant request. You need an unbiased, outside of the borough fact finder. It must include the reality of local competition from the services like Piston and Rudder and Petersburg Marine, as well as Wrangell's Marine Center. It must include the true cost of operation and maintenance of the proposed washdown facility. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, John.
And we join the harbor.
Yeah. Well, you know, this has been we didn't have anything to do with the grant application, but we have been talking about developing that for many years. It's just, we just haven't had any kind of funding to go ahead with it. So that's from the Harbor Board's perspective, as I've been on it for quite a few years now, that it's nothing new to development out there to the Harbor Board, but like I say, have you taken this grant application issue to the Assembly?
No, I have not.
Okay, that's what I would do if there's issues.
Well, that should be done by the, who should do
I'd
that?
just like to, just point out that you are an advisory board, you serve at the discretion of the Assembly, they give you the topics to discuss, you know.
And then we
They
give
want
our
your opinion
2
on the
cents.
Tiger grant, you know, they ask for it.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
It's been an economic development project rather than, I mean, it's right up there at the top of our harbor, project list would be a great asset to our waterfront and our harbor especially because of the harbor opportunity that's kind of on the end of the project. And if the boatyard ceases to be the project of choice, I still would advocate as a harbor master that we continue to push for a new basin out there and develop the uplands to support that. I mean, if we're not going to have a boatyard, or, you know, we're not doing that right, then maybe we need to look at it, you know, that's waterfront property that the borough owns that we would like to develop in the best interest of our community. And, you know, so right now, the boatyard is at the top of your list, but there are other things that also that can take that spot, you know, at the top of your list, so.
Well, what has been our position as far as our perspective as an advisory board is if the assembly asks for design, help with design of it, with working with the engineers, that's something that we've always been a part of, as to what are the needs of our fleet. And we've always been involved in that. But when it came to this grant application, that assembly didn't bring that to the Harbor Advisory Board. I don't know how much they came to the Harbor staff to come up with what's in this grant application.
It was more directed at PDC.
Like I said, the assembly has not seen this grant application yet.
Typically, the way it works is, you know, the minions are out there looking for money. We're doing our job, trying to support the projects of the future, that kind of thing. And when you successfully get a grant, then you bring it to the assembly and say, hey, we were successful in getting a grant. Do you care to go down this road and accept the grant and the rules that go along with it? That's typically how it works. So Liz worked her tail off to do this, this Tiger Grant, and submitted it. Now, again, if you're familiar with the Tiger Grant, it's something put out by the federal government. There are, I don't know how many millions of dollars, but let's say $50 million given away. We're up against the Port of LA. We're up against the Port of New York and Seattle and all these major places. I would be shocked if we'll get the money. But it shows to future agencies, you know, that are trying to help us fund some of these things, like a haul out so that we can get away with power washing boats on the grid. Shows that we're actively seeking funds, that we're going, you know, we're trying to do the work. And so I'd be shocked if we get this grant and that we actually can accomplish the things that were said when she, you know, when she put out the story. She's painting a picture. She's telling a story. But if we do, great. We have at least a start here. So, you know, specifics. I didn't write it. I did not in the specific, but I am on the economic development group, and we appreciate the work that went into this. And as Harbor Master, I appreciate the work that went into it. Because bottom line is, you know, we're trying to promote this project.
Thanks, Glo. Kurt and then Brian.
You know, and quite honestly, John, you've even stated yourself, but it's less than ideal situation out there. So don't take it personal when she's trying to build a case that says that we need more money for development. So don't take that personal, okay? Because you stated here time and time again to us. You stood up before us time and time and said, this is inadequate, it's dangerous, it's this and that. All she did was took those thoughts of yours and ran with them. So I appreciate your comments, and I appreciate what Liz has done. So I'm just simply saying that we just have to be careful here, you know, how we attack people when we do this sort of stuff.
Yeah, Brian?
Thank you. Like, yeah, I sit on the PEDC too, and I think you need to not quite take this as personally as you're doing it, John. It wasn't personal, and oftentimes when you're writing a grant, you're going to make things look maybe a little, you're going to take a little poetic license with it. And nothing was done in this grant application to try to harm you. It's unfortunate that maybe somebody took it wrong, and, you know, we never see that in this town anyway, on any other issues, so. But I just, I think you really, and I think Kurt's something up there too, that, you know, you just need to look at what we're trying to do out there, and it's trying to improve the situation, trying to develop another harbor eventually out there, you know, which will benefit this entire town. So I think maybe you took this a little too personally.
Okay, we've got a lot more agenda to get through here, but this is I'm glad you spoke your 2 cents, and everybody's aware of a valid issue that you have with the grant. But like I said, I think I agree with them that I don't think it was meant, I think it was meant to paint a picture that we need money. You know, I think that's the bottom line. But anyway, we'll move on to the staff report.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
I might have some comments under visitors' views related to agenda.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
On 8A, when we get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we get there.
Yep.
Okay, Harbor Master's report. Okay, well, you can read, kind of how the year went, the summer went, staff-wise. We were lucky enough to pick up Jake Slavin, which really helped us get through the summer, especially Jim Engel joined our staff as typically he does. And then I just laid out how our schedule works. Maintenance, we did a bunch of stuff, thanks especially to Jake joining the team. We were able to upgrade the signage, we replaced a waste oil containment, we transferred between 10 and 12,000 gallons to the Baylor facility, so that's kind of standard. We got to move forward on the replacing all of the original fasteners on the beams of the South Harbor Grid, which was a major thing because it hadn't been done since it was new. In '84, we did major concrete patching, we painted all the harbor buildings, we fabricated brackets for the South Harbor stall. We're probably going to try and do next year. Install flotation under major areas of the 84 main floats. Repainted all the parking lines and a whole host of other things that I didn't write down. The big thing that's happening this year, it's been going since 2016, the middle of summer, is the feasibility study that we're moving forward with. Remember, we were approached by the Corps, they came and saw, they realized there was a federal there was possible federal interest in dredging entrances and areas in the South Harbor. So they've been kind of periodically coming and going, and we've been meeting with them, and they're putting their money where their mouth is. Right here this week, we have surveyors here that are sonaring the entire basin of the Middle and South Harbors for possible high spots to dredge. Talking to different vendors. I think Glenn is one, a couple of other guys, the Latuya and also Tamco, about providing platform for the sounding that will happen on the low tides or the small tides in April. Recently, the mayor has been anticipating a possible trip to DC, and so we're kind of scratching our head on how to best approach the delegation to forward this project as well as other dredging projects in this general area. So anyway, that's been an exciting. I attached the fact sheet that kind of gives you the outline of what's been done and where we're going with it that you can read through. And again, Liz has been helping us to address some of the needed information. So big thanks to her for the time she spent. Under miscellaneous things, just a report on the scheduled cruise ships for future discussion. Monitoring the parking lots, we again did that. We've been talking with the police department. Maybe they're going to pick it up, but so far we're still, it's in our basket. We did host the AHPA conference here in October. Thank you to all the board members that participated in that. It went really well. I think they'll be talking about the shrimp feed and the seafoods feed that we sent them off with the last day of the convention. The drive down facility Uplands are attracting a lot of new storage business. We're getting guys from other places that are using our facility. It's nice for these big Fred Wall boats to be able to turn and burn from Petersburg because we have that facility and a place for them to do a lot of their storage requirements. So that's an increase, which is nice. Just a comment there, the bulkhead has really helped that. Remember we finished that project last winter, and so this last summer was really the first real use of it. And it did its job. We saw a lot of that increase coming over that particular dock, because they're confined to what they can bring up the ramp. Whereas if you go to the dock in a crane truck, you can get just about anything on and off on the kai and stage it at the land area. We're working on the budget now. Just a reminder that we did away with the 10% savings on, if you pay prepaid, you're in advance, get 10% off. We did away with that as a first step to increasing fees. If you remember our waterfront master plan, we did a rate study. Northern Economics told us that if we increased rates across the board 12%, we would be in line with what they would expect for being able to replace our portions of our facility in the future. So that's not bad. We've always been on the high end when it comes to moorage, second only to Juneau. And so by doing that, we're sitting pretty good. So we plan on including that as part of our budget. We're going to raise rates 9% on the moorage side because of doing away with the 10%. We'll realize about $30,000 of extra income because of that. That's about what we lost by giving that break. So everything else will go up roughly 12%. Things like launch permits and transient things that they require.
Will you be higher than Juneau then?
We still won't be higher than Juneau, but we're about cross board with them. And then finally, the raw fish tax. I gave you the history there. We saw it was a little skewed last year to this year because they recalculated the calendar, and so you can kind of combine those two and divide by 2 to really see what we took in this year versus last year. But that being said, the harbor saw another $5,500,000 into our savings. So that's what we use to provide match money for projects or seed money for other things. So it's not part of our operations and maintenance. It is that fund that we'd like to grow to 5-6 million so that we have money to match for a new harbor someday or other things that come along. So fleet activity, it was a busy summer. Commercial side was down, probably due to activity in other areas as well as the closing of Ocean Beauty. Increased fishing up in Juneau area probably had the most to do with it. So there's no questions, that's my report.
Thanks, Glo. Is there any questions from the board? I'd just like to say I did some of the flotation under some of the fingers in the South Harbor this summer, and they're rapidly deteriorating. So we're going to have to think about replacing a lot of that harbor in the near future, I think, because there's like concrete. It just fell off the bottom of the dock. It's exposed rebar and wire mesh and styrofoam, and there's some of them are not looking. They're going to last very much longer. So it's just food for thought that we're going to.
Benz and I have talked about this. Do you approach it trying to replace 1 or 2 of those a year, or do you wait 10 years and make it a major project where we can go to the state with 50% of the money and do a substantial project? That's what I would advocate for instead of hemorrhaging over a long period of time. Because those, building 1 or 2 fingers at a time is going to be much more expensive than building 30. You're going to get a better contract. You're going to get. So anyway, that's kind of the way we've been talking about, and that's probably the way I will approach it. We'll keep continuing to patch things until we can't, and then move forward on a substantial upgrade of the 84 float. Remember, there's 2 sections there. There's the float in the South Harbor that was built in 1984, and then the section that was built in 2000. And so that 84 is what we're talking, those vintage fingers and main float are wearing down.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Okay, if there's no questions for Glo, then we could move on to unfinished business, which I don't see any
New business.
new business.
Oh, yeah, right.
We don't see any unfinished, but new business, discussion on the Juneau Marine passenger fee ordinance with regards to putting it in place for Petersburg.
And Jody's here too, if you want to have any questions for her about that.
So I have a question. If Jody, if we were to put this into place, how would that work for you to, a lot more work for you to be keeping track of a fee like that? And
I think, at least how it's worded for Juneau's ordinance, once they land in Petersburg, they send to the borough a manifest, passenger manifest. I think our staff could take that, how many passengers, times it by the fee, create an invoice, email them off an invoice. I don't really think it would be that big of a deal.
okay, thanks. It was just a question that we had talked about, is how much more burdensome this would be if we put it into an ordinance.
As long as all those cruise ships are on board with this and it wasn't a big fight.
Okay, discussion. Did you want to discuss?
Yeah, from my point, I think it's a great idea. I don't know what we've done some, soul searching in the harbor. Again, I would just maintain that as a harbor, we have a vehicle for raising money from these ships, and it's called moorage, and that's where I would propose that we raise more, of which we're planning on doing next year, 12%. Again, we're charging $400 for the inner harbor and $500 for the drive down and Petro. That's what they're charged per stop. So it's not a big increase. It's $50, $60, but it's a little bit. Goes in line with everything. If we needed to raise funds to provide these other these projects, which I gave you a project list, we're going to need. We're going to probably need some more money, so, maybe a bigger moorage fee is what I would propose. And stay out of, the harbor department stay out of the head tax. Or if you want to call it a passenger fee, whatever you want to call it.
Sure, I got a question for Dave. You deal with these folks all the time, and with the 12% that the harbor master said that we're increasing, do you see the cruise ships that we currently have coming, seeing that additional $5 per person as a problem? Sorry, I didn't mean to catch you full mouth.
I don't see that it would be that it would discourage vessels to come here, especially if they saw that we were using the money to develop things in the harbor that would benefit, their passengers or visitors at some, in some method.
Okay.
That could be, creating a covered area on Dock Street while the passengers, off of, that are using Petro Marine to stand in, for instance. There's lots of things on the list that could be used for that.
Mm-hmm.
One of the questions I had about, or had just some thoughts about, was whether this would perhaps be applicable to some people to some cruise lines that are using the borough. Not just the dock itself, but are they going in the Carong, for instance, and they're transiting borough waters or showing people, a portion of our borough land over at Le Camp Glacier, or, if they don't even come into Petersburg. Is this transportation, or user fee, whatever we're going to call it, will it be applicable to them also? That's the question that we're, talking about as far as this is concerned.
Yeah,
Is there
Kurt?
precedent already on that basis? Do you know anything like that? Are we going to have to reinvent the wheel?
I am not completely aware of that. You?
I'm not, Mr. Chairman, I'm not aware of it either, but, when I originally started talking about this proposal, my intent was to have it be applicable to any vessel that entered the Petersburg borough and used borough land. I hear complaints all the time from people over in Kupernoff saying that people are wandering up and down that, the docks, it gets to be busy and crowded and stuff, and we have people, they've sent me a list this morning of where the visitors land in the borough. They might go over to Cascade Creek or over to the glaciers, and I think there's ways of figuring out where the people are. I mean, the AIS system that is around has a pretty good idea of where folks are, and I think for a small fee, you could, just for the first year, try and see who's using the borough lands. I mean, it's not a lot of money, like Lorraine and I have been talking, it's not a lot, but in a day and age where we're looking for new sources of revenue, this is one that's been untapped. And as long as we refer to it as a marine passenger fee, there might be some indication that it doesn't have to go to a vote of the public. And I imagine if we get a recommendation from the Harbor Board, we would probably talk about it at the next assembly meeting and send it to the attorney along with the draft ordinance to see how it would fit for Petersburg. And we could certainly answer those questions about what other communities are doing, because this is where the starting point was with the Juneau ordinance. But
Yeah, I see they do have exemptions for 20 passengers or less, and, there's different things that they've incorporated to fit Juneau.
yes.
So we would, like you say, we'd have to figure out a way that it would fit into our community. So,
Like that one that Dave was mentioning that was gonna deadhead here or stop it, I mean, maybe they could get a break. That's pretty cool.
There is a provision for that.
Yeah.
If they are purchasing rooms in town where they are paying a transient room tax fee on, that they would feasibly be exempt from that. I believe that Dennis Rogers told me that in his operation of his boat, if he just passes through Juneau waters, he's having to contribute to their borough, not only if he goes to their dock.
So, but what you're asking, following up with what you asked Jody, she was pretty, if you get a manifest that says, where, you've been through here, it would be that easy. Now, are you talking about just anchoring in Thomas Bay and going out by kayak and actually, if you step on the land, you pay, if you don't step on the land? I mean, at some point, it's like, who's going to be, I'm just speaking for Jody, who's going to be, monitoring on this, all this kind of stuff?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm not trying to make any more work for city staff. I want to make this, the first go-around on this, as easy as possible.
right.
And then if we see some places that need to have it tweaked, as long as it's not something that needs to go to the public every time you want to change, as long as we get some recommendations from the finance department and the harbor department that, we might want to think about doing this. I mean, that's all I'm trying to do, is just get it in place so we can see how it works. Like we talked about, that's a $5 fee for the way, we're talking $30,000, but it would be up to the assembly and the community to decide how much money we wanted, what kind of fee we wanted from the visitors.
Yeah, John?
I think an important thing would be to be fair with the cruise industry to channel that money back that directly helps them. And for those vessels that don't come into town, that just go to the LeConte or drop anchor someplace, we could put some money into Chamber of Commerce for advertising, that sort of thing, that would directly benefit both parties. So I think we're all on the same page. It's just a matter of trying to figure out how to keep it fair. And I didn't read everything on the Juneau situation, but there was some controversy there. I don't think it's in the courts. I think it's just complaints, and that had to do with beautification items on the streets that the cruise industry felt didn't affect them. That's the stuff that would have to be avoided, I think.
Jeff?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, that's exactly right, John. They were concerned that the money wasn't being spent in the best interest of the visitor industry. And I think we could certainly craft some language in here to meet those needs and avoid any kind of conflicts like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Glow.
I think that's where the harbor could play a part, giving the assembly some suggestions, giving, just kind of like the chamber gives suggestions to, how to spend that money. I think we could give the chamber suggestions on how to, maybe they get all the money and they can, entertain some of these suggestions of the harbor board and the harbor staff come up with. We came up with some, a varying list from high to low on potential projects, just brainstorming.
Yeah, it would be probably a good idea, if, like Dave was to, communicate with these cruise ships, is get ideas from them of what they would like to see, like a covered area, like you're saying. We talked about that for quite a few years.
Yep.
But it's just coming up with projects that everybody feels is important. Okay, any other discussion on the...
Just a quick
Yeah.
comment here, Mike, then, I'm just going to throw this out here, like, we all pay a certain fee depending on the length of our vessel when we get our initial, vessel license every year. So you don't, if you have a tour ship or something, if you want to come into the borough waters and you're a certain length, it's going to cost you just a base price. And that's just what you pay whether you step on the beach or take a kayak, whatever. We can start with something really small like that, something really mundane, something simple, under $500, let's say, for a ship that's $275. Just get the ball rolling, and then just have it incrementally, depending on the size of vessel you have. So if it's going to be a recommendation that you guys want us to pursue, maybe come up with some ideas similar to that, that we can look at and craft into some language. That way, we won't have to do it like passenger. It'll just be like vessel size.
Yeah, well, that's what Gloria answered. We could just raise some rates to match, but in order to utilize the funds, if you're going to do a passenger fee, then it would go through the borough instead of through the harbor.
I was just thinking of our vessels passing through our borough waters. I wasn't thinking of those that would come into Petersburg.
Okay.
If you're trying to capture something there,
yeah.
what you would do is you would just have them get a vessel license for plying in our waters. And depending on how big you are, it would depend on what your rate would be.
That's, the assembly gets to decide that. That's not the harbor department. The harbor's not going to be monitoring that. Kidding me?
Yeah. Well, what's the pleasure of the harbor board? Would you guys like to send a recommendation to the assembly that we would back or be in support of this kind of a fee?
I think so.
So move. Okay, well, I think you get the gist of what the feeling of what the board feels like. This is probably a good direction to go, and then the assembly can work out the details. And if you need more input from the harbor board, just let us know.
Yep.
So.
I wouldn't mind making a comment here.
Sure.
I mean, we have people come in. I'm in the tourism industry myself, and I'm charged the city sales tax. I pass on to my customer. And if all these other communities have a passenger fee or a head tax, I mean, I would think that it would be logical that we should have something that's commensurate and normally accepted. Now, some of these concepts of if a vessel just passes through, I mean, how do you enforce that? I mean, and give the harbor staff a computer with AIS and then, start sending people.
They have.
You know what I mean? I mean, it seems kind of, like there's not enough money involved, but, for these tourism companies, these cruise ship companies, they have passenger manifest and they tie to our dock, and there's something that's, boom, done. They're very familiar with the process in other communities. I'm certain it wouldn't be that much of a difficulty.
I think it needs to enter into the conversation.
Yeah.
That's part of it.
Yeah.
Just bring up these different ideas, and we could work with.
No, I
what's best.
understand that. I deal with the Forest Service, and the Forest Service has jurisdiction on the uplands, and the state of Alaska has jurisdiction below the uplands. And so it's when I get my special use permit, they're taking my word on how many days I take people ashore. And so there's a, like an honorary, or not, I guess I'm giving my information voluntarily. And I wouldn't be so certain that other vessels that pass through are going to be willing to get a permit, to write a check.
Yeah. Well, like I say, I think it's just something
that.
that we need to talk about different venues of how we can collect from boats and in our borough. I think that was the gist of the conversation. But
no, I agree with that. I also think that you're in business tying boats up and you talk about raising rates. I think we need to explore the people that come through this community. They're also using our land and our infrastructure, and they need to be, it shouldn't be all placed on the people that tap in our harbors to pay these new fees.
Right, and, I just caution you, we are, once again, we're an enterprise fund. This is this is as close to a business as you'll get in the public sector, in the government sector. So it's got to make sense. So just like our parking, we have to raise enough money in order to pay the employee who's going to be doing the monitoring. And so every time we add another thing to monitor and that kind of stuff, it's going to take away from the funds that you hope to free up to do some of these wonderful projects to make their lives that much better coming here. So, just caution about, keep it simple, keep it really simple. So that Jody can just get a manifest and send them a bill, get the check, and spend it, rather than having to hire another part-time employee to monitor them.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, any other discussion on the passenger fee? Okay, I think the assembly members here can convey our thoughts. Okay, the next thing is, let's see, we're to capital projects, project needs list. The borough manager has requested the board update the harbor's capital needs list to use when seeking funding. Attached is last year's list.
So in your packet, you have the list that they sent up to the legislature. They kept it short and sweet. Scow Bay made the list for being on the community list. And so, again, the assembly makes that decision. But you get to make a decision on what we want to give them as a project list. So,
This is the
I
packet.
included, I handed out
isn't it?
this Petersburg additional capital project list. Again, this is from 2016. And I also gave you in a handout on how you prioritize and a little bit of a brief description on each one after the title. So, is there anything you want to change? Right now, you have Scow Bay is number 1, the dredge is number 2, North Harbor parking is number 3, maintenance shop upgrade is number 4, South Harbor utility float, Alcatraz is number 5, harbor office rebuilding, which includes the shower, the restrooms downtown, that's number 6. 7th is South Harbor ramp replacement, making both of the north and south ends ADA compliant. Number 8 is increasing the launch ramp capacity and parking by adding another launch ramp in the South Harbor. You'd have to do that by doing number 9 first. You'd have to acquire the land that currently is owned by Ken and Stacy Madsen and the Hoosbeck rental property. Also on that list is the State of Alaska maintenance facility. Someday that would be nice to have that if we're gonna go down the Scow Bay road very, very far. And then middle of the harbor approach replacement. The approach up to the ramp is showing wear and tear, and so I had, this is again 2016 prices. That's going to be about $700,000. So, you want to add anything to the list? I've also added some of the other things that you've talked about in the years. Boathouse, fire shed, covered work area at the drive down approach, replace the North Harbor skiff float and the trolley work float, renovate the North Harbor tidal grid, demo the North Harbor launch ramp, South Harbor float repairs and replacement. That's the big one, the elephant in the room that Mr. Banks was talking about earlier. $13 million is what we figure that's going to cost someday. So, you want to change those around? You want to add anything? You want to keep it like last year? What do you want to do?
What does the funding mechanism look like for?
Well, you got to ask. I mean,
Yeah,
and
you're right.
As we know, every single one of the projects we've done has been on a list for 20 years. So consider this year 19. Because someday it'll happen. But you got to be on the list. And like we've always been a proactive group, I think sometimes we get some people take it as, oh, the harbor's always asking for things, but again, we have to have a list so that future assemblymen know where your head is at, and that you've been doing the work of worrying about these things. That it just didn't pop up yesterday. So right now, again, on page 22 of your packet is the capital project that the Assembly approved, and Scally is number 2. Do you like that as being your number 1, so that they hopefully will put that on their list somewhere? So really, it's how do you want to prioritize the waterfront projects updated? This one right here that gives you the brief description of each one. If you look at that's the one you'll organize, and then it'll filter into these other ones, these other lists. So everybody get this one in front of you.
Yeah.
What page?
This is just a handout, and it's an amendment or something.
Get this one.
Hey, so
in front of you.
what about this, the South Harbor maintenance dredge is supposed to happen,
No, it's not. This is a feasibility study.
okay.
This is
But
just-
we know that something needs to be done.
We know that. It needs to be done. And so at some point, you'll be faced with saying, okay, the feds will bring 50%, or they'll bring 75% of the cost to the table. Are you willing to put up 30%? We don't know what that costs. It could be anywhere from $5 to $10 million project.
So that's what the feasibility is.
That's what we're
They're
figuring.
surveying it right now. We know there's some shallow areas because boats are going aground every summer, and stuck. And I've dove on a rock there between the Middle Harbor. I think the rock is probably as big as this room. I don't even know if they'd have to blow it up or something. But there's things that are giving us problems. And I think that, the Scalaway haul-out and wash-down facility is going to happen as well, eventually, because we're not going to be able to use grids. But I'm wondering...
One thing to comment about that is when this is something they're going to the state with, the state will not fund dredging. So that might help you in your category, too, is if you put that at your top and then you don't even get on the Assembly's list, because they're going to say, well, the harbor's number 1 project is the dredge, and the state won't fund any dredging, so let's move
So
on to...
this probably shouldn't even be on this if it's a list that's going to the state.
Well, but it is, this is our list. The Assembly picks off of this list, right? So again, you prioritize what you think, and then, so...
I kind of think that the Scalaway washdown facility is going to entail some federal monies if they're the ones that put the hammer down on the use of the grid. That would be a combination of federal and state, I would think.
That's where this Tiger grant was federal money. That's why she went after
Yeah.
federal.
Kurt?
And the other thing too, Mike, is over the years I've learned that these monies will come from different pots. So you put down your priorities, and they'll look at Scalaway as number 1, and then maybe ADA ramp or something, how you guys decide to do this. Or maybe ADA is the 5th on the list. They'll look down this thing and they'll go, well, we only have 1.2 million to give you. Which would you like that to be plugged into? Here's your option. Then you look at a 1.2 million project, and it's not the Scalaway, it's whatever that one is. So anyway, just put them down there how you guys, in your mind, how you would like to see things develop. And then when the state then looks at those numbers, then they'll decide which you get funded if they're going to fund any at all.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, John.
One item you mentioned, that the feds would be the one to put the hammer down. That would be the state, because the federal EPA has contracted with state Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation to enforce all the federal requirements. So that would be a state jurisdiction.
Well, I don't think the state has any money. But, yeah. Well, I'm good with the list the way it is, because I can see where what you're saying, Kurt, is if we only get a couple $100,000, maybe we could go ahead and upgrade the shop or something, whatever we can get. But I know that the haul out and wash down is we've talked about it for years. So
I think it should stay on the top. It's moving forward, with expanding our marine industry here. That's what it is.
And we've already,
My recommendation would be
yeah, I agree. So any other discussion on prioritized projects?
I think the parking situation is a huge issue.
and that could get funded, if they only have so much money to give you. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's
Right.
just-
It's half of the,
Our number 3.
what?
It's our number 3.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge issue. I mean, when you look at what you prioritize, I mean, what's going to serve the most people the most benefit?
Well, $46,000 per parking space is pretty expensive.
That's pretty expensive, but,
This is just a wish list.
right.
Yeah.
It is, but it also keeps, it keeps the reality of the price tags and kind of where it fits into. We've accomplished some big things on this priority list. Remember, things like new North Harbor was top of the list, and there were drive down was top of the list. There was a lot of things on this list that we've been able to check off, so it's really an important.
Yeah, I agree. Jake, did you have something you
I
want
did.
to?
I have a question for Bob there. What was the price on that Petro facility? I mean, if the guy, to kill two birds with one stone, I see parking there, I see maintenance shop well, and if you were to rebuild the harbor department down the road, you have at least a building to fall back on or something. Like I said, it's just a wish list here, but if you're prioritizing and kind of want to get 2 or 3 things done at once, I see more parking there, I see a maintenance shop and storage, and I just think that should be a little higher on the list there. So
Yeah, thanks,
of
Jake.
course that would take
Yeah.
more.
We talked about that.
I know, we've talked about it many times. Is it for
I think
sale?
I'd free up parking.
Actually, they do not want to sell it, but they would work something out with the city, I'm sure.
Who's that?
And I think you know where I'm going.
Right now, we have a lease with Petro for land, as well as the dock, as well as the fuel lines going down. That's about $70,000 a year. And Petro has come to the borough, to the assembly, not to the harbor, to the assembly, and said, we'd like you to consider giving us trading maybe property, like where the little Petro gas station is, and the shed behind where they have all of their oil and stuff. Trade that for, plus probably some money, for the old Alaska Fuel Station building and
Union Oil.
Facility there.
So Bill, that 70 would come right out of your guys' lease.
It would,
budget, though.
it would, and so Jody and I've talked about
Well,
it,
It wouldn't be 70. It's like, I think 28 or 32, maybe that it went up. Yeah.
So it would be, reduce it somehow, and probably do an exchange of some funds as well. And then they'd be rid of that. We'd be rid of the liability on where the lube oil is and the little Petro. They'd own that. And so I've been a proponent of that for years. Everybody, but somehow I can't get the assembly to go along with it.
I know that private users would prefer to see something like that too.
Even though we would, in a sense, be taking on a revenue bond in the harbor by raising harbor rates to compensate for 28,000 or 30,000 the other position. I'm not saying it's a bond. I'm not saying it goes to the vote of the public. I'm just saying, but I'm just saying though that the harbor users would be saying, okay, we're willing to commit to you guys getting a different shed, so we'll raise our rates to cover the loss of that income that we're getting from Petro. Basically.
Right, and one thing,
And
one thing we can, we've talked about, the future of the budget and those kind of things, and we make more money than we spend, okay? So we're socking away money. There also, in 2021, our bond that we have to pay off the South Harbor upgrade, which we did in 2000 and 2003, will be going away. know, so therefore, there's going to be a little bit of a jump, which Northern Economics has factored into these rate increases, but, yeah, no, it would be a lack of revenue on our side, but what would we get out of it? Right now, we, as most of you know, the way we operate out of our shop, we are operating and maintaining this harbor that we took over ownership in 2006 in a shop that is, the size of this table. And we have 6 containers, of which I'm going to have to buy another one to support our maintenance side of things, which we didn't used to have. We own these facilities now. Right now, we do things like we buy the forklift and we house it up at Public Works, and they get to use it for because they house it. Those kind of things. There's a lot of that kind of stuff that goes on, which is the way we've lived. But we spend a lot of time going from here to there to gather up all the stuff to do a project. It would be really nice if we had freed up the space in the middle harbor for 3 or 4 extra parking spots, because we have 2 vans over there. It'd be really nice if we could free up some of our storage area, because we have 3 or 4 of these vans out in port storage. We have a big portion of Scow Bay, if you come up the ramp on the north side, that's full of harbor surplus stuff that we may, everything from benches to pilings to all sorts of things, that we could put in a different location and free up space. And that, to me, is a value. And I think we could figure that out. I mean, the lack of income, sure, is certainly, but it's not just that.
Yeah. It would probably factor out to about $1.50 a foot per year for both.
Oh, no, it wouldn't. I mean, we make that money right now. We don't, I mean, we're $20,000 above what we spend. We make sometimes $150,000 more than what we spend. Depends on what we take in is what I spend. I mean, again, this is enterprise fund. We don't have to spend it just because it says it's in our budget. So we live within our means. That's we're taking in the income now. We wouldn't have to raise rates.
Want me to sign that for you?
Okay, we're getting kind of off the track here, but it's a good discussion, because that would be a lot cheaper parking spaces gained than $46,000 each. But it would save a lot of space for storage. It would be
There's a lot of property there.
Yeah. Okay, so if everybody's good with the capital project list as it is on the board here, just move it forward.
Yep.
Okay. I don't think we need to take a motion on that. I was kind of in agreement that that's the way we should forward it to the Assembly. Okay, these are resolutions for the upcoming legislative session. And the one requests the Assembly to pass a resolution in support of full funding for the State of Alaska Municipal Harbor Facility Grant Program. That's the 50/50. Do you want to explain that just quickly?
That's the one that we have before you every year, just trying to get the governor to put it on his budget so we don't even have to go for campaigning for it. This year, the numbers would be different, but the one you have in front of you is the one you passed last year. You requested the Assembly to pass last year, and they did. And so, I'd like you to advocate for it again this year.
Absolutely.
How come you went to $18 million?
No, the $18 million is how much it generates. Like, if we show up with 50% and they show up with 50%, then you turn it in.
I thought you were
9
asking
million
the
into
legislature
18.
for 18 million.
Well, fully funded, I thought at one point there was 20 million or,
Yeah,
so,
it is.
yeah.
This year it's 9.8.
And I think that's based on a percentage of the raw fish tax that the state withholds, or nothing to do with that? It's just a matching program that they gave instead of giving more fish tax back.
Back in 2006, when they got out of the harbor business, they said, we're not going to abandon you, we're going to have this fund available on an annual basis through the legislature for you to come and request money to replace harbors. In the past, they owned these harbors, they had to replace them 100%. They want skin in the game, and this is the way they do it. So. But there are years that they don't fund it at all. Sarah Palin didn't fund it at all one year.
And I think pressure was put on the state to give up a little bit more of the raw fish tax, because that was where they were getting 50% of it, and they weren't doing anything with the harbors. So there was a few legislators that went to them and said, hey, how about 70? Give us 70%, and so it turned out to be, well, they got this grant program to kind of like, well, we're going to do this for you.
Yeah.
So I guess it's kind of like a penance of goodwill.
And it's one of those things that we just have to exercise this. We just have to keep bringing it to their attention that it's important and that we're doing the work of saving our money. You need to be able to.
Okay. Does the board, do you want to push this forward and have the Assembly pass the resolution to support funding for it? I agree. Okay. The next one, request for this. Okay. There's a motion to adopt resolution 2016-28.
Second motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to move forward with asking the Assembly to pass the resolution in support of full funding. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, next one is the Assembly Support Senate Bill 92, and that has to do with derelict vessels. Glo, do you want to give us just a recap?
Just one thing that comes before you every year, too, about the derelict vessel legislation that we're trying to tighten it up and to give, do things like make it a criminal act, be a misdemeanor, but a criminal act to do this kind of stuff. So that they give the legislature, give law enforcement some teeth. I put in a sample of the Alaska Association of Harbor Masters, kind of some of the whereases that they are the high points they feel for the resolution. It hasn't passed in large part because of the insurance requirements that are also incorporated into the Senate bill. So, it's I know a sticky wicket, and
What, didn't this happen last year?
Yep, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
The same as last year and the year before.
John?
For our new members, let me review, to the best of my memory, what we did last year. And I think there's been no changes since last year. Is that correct? Okay, this was discussed at this Harbor Board meeting a year ago. And the original derelict vessel legislation is this right here. That goes back, 15, 20 years probably. And it's a whole 4 pages. The new one's quite a bit longer. Part of the original derelict vessel legislation is a paragraph that I brought up last year. And it's a title called Disposition of Vessels by Person in the Vessel Repair Business, which would apply to businesses like mine, boatyards, and so forth. And it's a very straightforward procedure for a person who's in the vessel repair business who gets stuck with a derelict vessel to dispose of that vessel. The current proposed legislation has dropped that paragraph in its entirety. I've argued this with, what was the lady's name? Who heads up AHPA?
Rebecca Lord.
Okay. And the reason they dropped it was they thought that could be done through civil courts. Well, that's what boatyards and so forth want to avoid, because you'll have to spend $10,000 plus in civil courts taking a person to suit, and probably several years, where this particular paragraph is very simple, very fair to all parties, but it's something you can follow without having to hire an attorney and file a civil suit. And so a year ago, we as a group endorsed this with an amendment, or with the exception that this chapter be retained to allow parties who are in the vessel repair business to be able to dispose of a vessel. I hope I'm being clear there. And so I suggest we just do the same as we did last year. And all the other different vessel repair businesses throughout the state, boatyards I've talked to, are all concerned about that and are all on the same page. They want to keep this. And a little bit of tidbit information. Yeah, this didn't move anywhere in the legislature because of the insurance requirement, and also what we passed as a Harbor Board motion, and that carried forward and went on to the mayor. The mayor chose not to bring it in because of the sticky wicket insurance thing. I think he kind of wanted to avoid that, and I don't blame him. But so we have the option of just not doing anything on this, or passing it as they requested, or do as we did last year, and we passed it as with the amendment that this chapter be retained in Senate Bill 92.
John's remembering it right on. And then just a little bit more at our AHPA meeting, we brought this up, the insurance aspect, and I actually invited Sue Erickson from our Petersburg Rangel Insurance to attend that meeting. She gave a presentation during the conference that included this, and she actually is going to work with the AHPA in some of the future conversation about how we can tweak the insurance to actually make sense. Because she also says it doesn't really spell it out properly. So that being said, I don't know that there will be much traction at all at the legislative level. I don't know if you just want to take the pass this year or if you want to move it forward. But these are the two bits of legislation that the AHPA requested that all harbor boards review, send to their respective assemblies. And so our assembly's used to hearing about it, so that's why I included it on the agenda.
Well, what's the will of the board?
I suggest we pass it.
Any comments? I could agree with John. We could just pass on it this year until they come up with the right wording that's got some teeth that can hold up in the legal system. So, yeah, Kurt.
Mike, I know years and years and years ago, we had this discussion at the Harbor Board level that one man's trash is another man's treasure. We wanted to get rid of some vessels in the harbor there, and the attorneys advised us that we didn't have the authority to do that because even if we thought it was a disrepair, who were we to say that it was beyond that person's capacity to take care of it? As long as they're paying their bills. So unless this legislation has got some kind of, parameters in which, the vessel has been in delinquency on paying, for services, or, after 90 days. I mean, and there's a long list that we have to go through, like a 30-day notice or 60-day notice, and then 30 days for them to respond and blah, 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 before we can even get rid of a boat out of the harbor, So this could be a really complicated mess just to try to pass a really simple piece of legislation.
Well, the Senate bill is entitled an act relating to abandoned and derelict vessels.
So we have to have a definition for the word abandoned.
Well, not.
I mean, it's Arnold's vessel
They've
across,
done that.
to be more
They have done
specific,
that.
it's Arnold's vessel across the abandoned.
Yes.
And most of our eyes, we believe it is. But I'm not sure Arnold in his head thinks that he's going to someday salvage something off of that, so it's really not abandoned. So where do you, where do you draw that line, I mean, somebody's got to do that.
That's not a line we're going to...
These are the issues that you're talking about, I mean, you can't you can't ignore it.
Yeah.
But that's what the issues are talking about.
Well, hopefully they'll come up with the right wording that'll make something, give a little teeth for the harbor departments
I think
across the
we'll
state.
always find a way in there to help,
Yeah.
generate some money for the clients.
Okay, so I'm hearing we'll just pass on that for now. And
Pass it, or you want us to pass it as is, or you're not going to?
no, we're just talking about pass on it. Like
Ignore
it. Yeah, don't bother.
No comment.
Okay, thanks. Okay, communication. No items under communication. Discussion items.
You passed up the, the discussion on the Scout Bay was moved into
Into discussion items?
No, it was moved into the,
New business.
into new business.
Oh, new business.
To
New
communicate.
business, number 3.
Okay. So,
Now you're-
okay, I see where I messed up. Okay, discussion.
That's the PEDC Tiger Grant, right?
So where are we right now?
Well,
Establishing a mission statement.
yeah, that's under discussion, and we put frequency of meetings, timelines for meetings, mission statement, benches, and we moved the Tiger Grant application, and I thought we covered that.
I don't think we did.
Well,
discussed it
we
after I
discussed it,
spoke.
yeah, after you spoke. Is there anybody else that wants to comment on that? I mean, we can recommend that the Assembly review the application, the grant application, which they will, they haven't seen it yet, and then maybe give some feedback to the Harbor Board as far as
Correct
clarification?
me if I'm wrong, Liz, but this has already been submitted.
That's correct.
Yeah, so.
So it's already submitted, but the Assembly hasn't seen it.
Huh?
The Assembly hasn't seen it, though.
Yeah, but they won't see it
They won't
unless
see it.
we get some money. I mean, if they say, oh, you're going to get this Tiger Grant, then they'll see it.
It has to be approved first.
Yeah,
Okay.
John.
Why not entertain a motion to ask that the Harbor Advisory Board be involved in development of the plan? Because already there are discussions underway with the private contractors to run the business, and isn't that getting ahead of things that the Harbor Board should be discussing?
We've been discussing Scow Bay for years. We've got plans and everything else drawn up, architectural plans for the development of that place. We've talked about the washdown. We've covered a lot of things about Scow Bay. This grant application went in to see if there was any monies available, and the wording in the grant isn't our job. I mean, we just have ideas of how we want to develop that, and we've been working on it for, I don't know how many years. It's been a long time. And that's where the Harbor Board's always been part of that. Now, we weren't part of this grant, but the planning that we've been doing as far as development is always, we've had engineers give us architectural stuff and all sorts of projects that we wanted to do out there. And we've always been involved in it. We didn't have anything to do with this grant.
And you don't want to have anything to do with it?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, if the money's there, if this grant was to bring money to the community, then we can start developing with what the Harbor Board has been doing all along, the projects that we have. We don't have anything to do with private contractors or anything like that. Kurt?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but if this grant is accepted, then it's going to be presented to the Assembly to accept this grant or not. And then if we do accept this grant, it's not up to the Assembly how we're going to spend the money at that point. It's going to go to you guys to determine how you're going to spend that kind of money.
And then bring our
Yeah,
projects back to you.
Yeah, then
Yeah,
we'll approve
yeah.
it, and then away it goes.
Yeah.
Which the Assembly directs, right now it's a PEDC, it's like an economic development.
Right.
You know, which the economic development has come to the Harbor Board time and time again and said, what are your needs that we can incorporate into what John needs and what the community needs. The Harbor's always said, well, these are our needs. We need a wash down because at some point we're not going to be able to power wash boats on the grid. That's what the Harbor, customers need. And a new harbor someday, That's kind of what the Harbor needs.
Yeah, and we've always been participating in that all along, as far as what the Harbor Board's advisory capacity is we've laid out what we feel like we need to have out there with ideas from the public, and it's open meeting. But I don't see to where we don't decide on the grant. I mean, that's just money that's applied for to help us with our projects that we've picked out and been working on for quite a few years.
Does Liz have any, you want to say anything, Liz?
I guess I would just say that this grant The grant application was written to respond to the very specific criteria that the grant asked for, and it's very much focused on the facility, which we all know it's a transportation asset that was built as an amphibious airplane turnaround. So that's what that facility was constructed for. Terms like state of good repair and useful life are actually very specifically defined. It doesn't mean that you can't use the facility, but it was designed for a certain purpose, which is basically obsolete now. Once the airport runway was built, it's obsolete. So that's where, this grant starts. So that's the case that's being made to the federal agency, because what their focus is, it's not about jobs, it's not about whether this is important, it's not about whether there's businesses out there per se. What their focus is taking transportation assets and bringing them to the state of good repair. And so I think if you understand the context a little bit about what the agency is looking for, then the grant application makes sense, because it's not about what's going on out there. It's about the actual infrastructure, what it was created for, what it was designed for, where it is now, and what we're trying to do, which is basically repurpose an existing obsolete asset. It is not used as an amphibious airplane turnaround anymore, and turn it into something productive that we can use in our community to fill an infrastructure transportation gap that we have. So that's how I look at this application and what I'm trying to convey. And, if John took offense, it certainly was not the intent, and really not at all the focus of what this is about. This is looking at amphibious turnaround, not used anymore, and turning it into something that is positive and can be used in our community.
Thanks for that clarification. That helps me understand a little bit more about the process. And it is a PEDC kind of a move ahead with trying to secure funding so that we can help the community and develop a project out there that has benefits for the whole community and the fleet. So any other discussion? Okay, now we're on to discussion items. And I had written down a few things that John had mentioned he wanted to talk about. Frequency of meetings, we'll start with that one. Frequency of meetings has always been kind of by a needs basis, and in the summertime, we could never get a quorum. I don't think that it would be feasible to have meetings in the summer. We've tried in the spring, and sometimes that works, and then we usually meet through the winter. Anybody have any ideas on what would you like to see as frequency?
More than what we have right now. I don't have any set numbers, but when you only have, I think we only have 2 meetings this year.
We had a couple in the wintertime,
And
3 or 4 early.
the agendas get to be too long, and the meetings get...
Like, would it be out of, biannually maybe?
We usually have them more than biannually. We usually have them we'll probably end up having another one. If the assembly has a request, then we hold a meeting. If somebody in the board has an issue that they want to bring up, you go to the harbor office and request, we can get a meeting.
Technically, you're an advisory board that works for the assembly, the mayor, and city borough. So realistically, if you have an individual, you have something in the harbor board, you want the harbor board, or you want the assembly to discuss, they get to discuss anything and everything. And if they want opinion from you guys, they'll ask you for it. That's technically how it works. We don't build these agendas out of thin air. We build them off of what's going on at the assembly level. And realistically, a lot of this stuff just came down the pike in the last month. There really wasn't a lot going on. I was, really this marine passenger business is something Assemblyman-Member Mucci brought up here the last couple months. The capital project list is something that the manager asked for last month. The resolutions, those are something we usually do prior to January sometime. And John asked for the Tiger grant through as a discussion item. You guys can put stuff on discussion items, but realistically, there wasn't an agenda to really be made until the assembly directed you to. I mean,
But I think it's important to understand if the harbor board feels like we need to pass on something without, that we want to tell the assembly what we think about something, we're totally can do that. I mean, they won't have to listen to us, but we can express our opinion whether you ask for it or not.
yeah, you're a citizen of
Yeah,
your
and
community.
if it's affecting our harbors, then, and it's something that we feel strongly about, I think we could meet and recommend something. That's what our job is. Yeah, Jim?
Yeah, I would imagine that you'll see a draft ordinance of this marine passing fee in the next month. I think we're going to talk about getting a work session in sometime in early January to kind of, I imagine we'll have the draft ordinance by then. And then I imagine once we get a draft ordinance and when we kind of think, yeah, this looks like we want, I imagine we'll kick it back down and get some comments from the harbor board, just to see if it's looking like it's headed in the right direction.
Yeah,
I would expect that to happen.
that's, yeah. And then,
I know we tried this meeting thing one time before, Harold Medallion gave up the set and told us back in the days that, you know, he would like to just pick one day a month or whatever it was, you know, and if it seemed to work, is you had an agenda, whether that was the day that you shot for, and if it didn't, then you had to wait till the next month for that particular, whatever day you picked, you know, I can't remember what it, but do you remember that discussion that we had?
Well, yeah, we used to run all the
We
time.
wanted to do
but
it, you know,
was
like,
nothing regular, so
yeah.
Kathy O'Rear, she kind of really outlined it for us a few years ago that said, you really meet at the discretion of the assembly. So if they want you to discuss something, they'll kick it to your advisory board. That's really your job.
Yep.
I don't work for you. I work for the borough manager who works for the mayor and the assembly. I'm just here
And we
to
all work for you.
support.
and we work for nothing.
And we work for the people who elected us.
Right. And then that's why if we get we get public input, come up to you and say, hey, I want to, you know, you guys should address this, and we talk, and then it's like, okay, we get a meeting, and then we can convey the public's issue onto the assembly. Okay.
The vote is absolutely number one when it comes to hiring. And then everybody else works underneath that.
Which, by the way, right after the election, I did have somebody approach me, and maybe I should pass that on. And is this appropriate time?
If you want to discuss it, yeah, let's go ahead.
So someone approached me about the North Harbor parking and said that they had 2 outstanding tickets and were obviously and had discussions with the harbor department and didn't want to pay them. But their issue was, I mean, they go down to work on their boat and they come back up, they got a ticket. So I don't know. Has there been ideas discussed or?
Sure, I mean, there's lots of ideas discussed.
$2.3 million.
Exactly.
I mean, in the short term, I think the Middle Harbor, the Middle Harbor has.
It's too far to walk for these people?
I don't know.
Because we don't have,
The Middle Harbor has a permit.
no, the North Harbor has a permit, you know, and so they didn't want to use their permit to go over.
But the North Harbor has a permit to park in the Middle Harbor.
These people. Because the North Harbor does not have a parking lot. That is downtown parking.
Okay, so my question is, has there been any ideas discussed about limiting the parking along the bulkhead in the North Harbor?
That would be an assembly decision. I mean, it's not the harbor.
It used to be
You
the
don't have
harbor,
that kind of power.
but it was taken away by the assembly or the
That's
council.
Main Street parking.
Yeah, they just call it Main Street parking, and I got a ticket too.
It's 4 hours.
I think we've all got tickets down there, Scott.
Yeah, it's an ongoing issue, and that's just the way it is. I mean, you can't invent new parking spaces very easily.
No, but is there a way that we can be more accommodating to the people that are in the harbor? And, I mean, they're the ones that we're providing the service to, and if they can't access it effectively.
That's why we use the Middle Harbor parking lot as a place where we can park in North Harbor.
And that's why we patrol, because we have a lot of, let's say liveaboards that would park there and never move their vehicle.
That happens a
They go
lot.
on their trip. That's why we do every 4 hours. encourage the people
Yeah,
to move
I mean-
along. I mean, so I don't know, what is the ideal, 6.5 hours for that particular person, or 2 hours? I mean, a lot of people, go down to their boat for 2 hours, so.
Can we give people a permit? I mean, even though the harbor took it away, is there a way we can give them a,
For that specific
Like a-
area?
yes.
No, because then you'd have to give, I mean, it's downtown parking, so then you have to give Napa, I mean, that's their parking, is Napa, and that's the people that have the First Bank building, that's their parking too, and it's the people that are working at Trident, it's their parking too.
but why did the assembly take that away? What was
They
the
never
rationale?
gave it was never harbor parking.
Oh, never.
Well, Strumdall used to give permits out,
Not
but
for
that was
No, that's always been.
the Middle Harbor.
Yeah.
Well, can we make a recommendation to the assembly to give it to the harbor? That's a major issue.
You bet.
That's a
Why can't-
perfect topic for a harbor board meeting.
This is a recommendation to the assembly. This is what we're supposed to do.
We'll have to, brainstorm it, but we have been talking about it for a long
It's a
time.
great, that would be a great topic, because actually, it would be nice to close the parking to only harbor users, the South Harbor as well, only harbor users. Right now, the people that live along that area use the parking. The people that go to the Sons of Norway use the South Harbor parking. The people that are, if we just closed it all down to harbor parking, harbor users, then
So how many permits do we give to the South Harbor?
We
The
don't.
sticker permits that
The
we,
North Harbor.
zero.
the Middle Harbor.
No,
Our,
that South Harbor people don't get any.
no, not south, middle. Our permits that
Yes.
that you give us, how many?
Well, we have 127 stalls in the North Harbor, so we give 127 there, and we have 112 stalls in the Middle Harbor, so we give 112.
Okay, so we give 224, and we have how many parking spaces there?
30.
Yeah, okay. So that's the issue.
Raise,
Yeah, I know, yeah.
raise downtown and put it in parking garage.
No, 2.2, I mean, we got it, it's number 3 on our list.
Yeah,
We'll get
2.3 million.
We'll get, we'll get 50 additional parking spots, which we could use as North Harbor parking for the 134 stall holders.
But if that were to happen, I mean,
Yeah.
there are people that park their cars there all day long when they work on Main Street. I mean, it would,
And they
Might
get a
not make
ticket
a-
after 4 hours.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's the only way
Well,
we can.
how about this? How about if we put this as
Time to
an
come back and park and they get.
as an item on our next agenda so that we can take action and send a recommendation to the assembly, which I'm sure they would love to discuss this. But I think that would be a good thing to include in our next agenda. And I think I would like to have a meeting in January, if we could, after the first. Have a meeting, and then we could have a follow-up from the assembly on what we've discussed and sent forward to them, and then we can discuss the parking issue again. The winter is not too bad because they don't check, but the summer, it's not good.
It's a huge issue.
Okay, the other issue that John brought up was time for how long a meeting would last.
I withdraw that. And also the mission statement, but I think it's worthy to give thought to. You're just talking about, maybe I'll look at other harbor boards, see what they have for mission statements, and bring it up at a future meeting.
Sure, that'd be great. We could do that.
Yeah.
Another thing is frequency in the meetings too, John. If you have a few more, like, if you only have like 2 or 3 topics to talk about, then it goes quicker, but, it seems like here we had about a dozen, things to talk about.
And they just piled up quickly.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think frequency has a lot to do with how long those meetings are going to last.
Okay, Jeff wanted to talk about benches.
Yes, it's not a really big thing, but I've heard from a lot of senior citizens in town about, they realize that the benches are gone down on the sidewalk overlooking the North Harbor. And I'm just wondering if there's been any thoughts just over the winter, is maybe moving a portable bench that is out in the Scout Bay area there so some of the seniors can sit there. We've talked about including benches in some of the harbor master plan, but just for quality of life, I understand the issues with it during the spring and summer with the garbage and whatever else is going on down there, but just, I'm wondering if that's something that we can make happen, or you can make happen. I mean, it's
Yeah.
What area?
just right down there,
Where the
South
trees
of
are
Harbor Master said.
across from Napa, along the
Yeah.
railing there used to be benches,
Okay.
And they're all gone.
and they're all
gone?
gone.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Don, did you have?
enjoy
Question or
having a
statement.
sandwich, Joe. That's a-
Question is, I assume we removed them because of loitering and garbage and that sort of stuff. So something
And
that
ADA compliances and
ADA, how's it?
ADA compliances. You know,
Okay.
originally when that was first put in, again, this is not harbor, but it is. I mean, we kind of oversee it. There were benches as well as picnic tables with 4 seating.
Oh, yeah.
Had to take those out because cars pull in and they're too close to the back of the bench, and so we got called on the carpet about wheelchairs and people with walkers and stuff. Okay, so we had to pull those out. Then the benches became an issue. Yes, the loitering issue and it takes my staff a couple of hours in the summer times to clean up after the stuff that goes on out there, as well as, you know, reviewing video because drug dealers are, you know, things are going on up in that area. So it comes out to, it takes a lot of time and energy from the harbor. And if we're happy to pay an employee to do all of this, again, this is an enterprise fund and I'm going to raise your mortgage in order to do this, it just got to be such a hassle, and it took so much of our time that we just slowly have pulled them out. Things like the garbage cans are getting used by the Napa, you know, and by the people that live in the apartment building that are putting household garbage in it. It's getting strewed around. Jake can attest to this, and you spend 15 minutes, 20 minutes cleaning it all up, you know, the workers from the different, you know, sitting there and
High school kids. I've seen high school kids walk and leave all their lunch crap.
There isn't really that opportunity, I guess. It outweighed the opportunity for the local to go in and have a sandwich to look at the beautiful harbor, outweighed just the time and energy it took to clean up after this. So I slowly had the boys pull it out. In the wintertime, it is a hassle because it turns that area that we can snow plow with a four-wheeler and a blade, do it in 15, 20 minutes, to an hour-long project, because now if there's benches there, you have to take the snow blower and do it by hand rather than the blading.
Put all the benches over by Fish and Game.
There you go. So one of the things that we can do, and I can talk with Trident about it as well, if it's something that, because we rented the bunkhouse from OB this year, and we're going to do the same for next year. We can talk to the folks that are there and just tell them that that's not their kind of their private area to be, and that's something we can do on in-dock, and also we can have, because we have a resident who stays in there, who kind of is the police of that area, and he can also be that as well. And I know, you know, we can easily talk to Davey and have his folks police, because I agree. I like the benches. I like going there and sitting there.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a nice place to take a breather.
Yeah.
I don't like the trees.
Great, with the trees are the next thing.
Put that on your next agenda.
Yeah,
I mean, all those trees is just solid bird everywhere.
Like the light poles. Nobody parks underneath the light poles.
You gotta be
Just like birds, you know, on your...
Yes,
Jake, did you have something?
I did. I just wanted to comment on Don there. When I did work for Bloor, I spent a lot of time walking around picking stuff up. A lot of it was hairnets and cigarette butts and stuff. And when you guys were in that bunkhouse and you go through the bank parking lots and stuff, so I'd make my rounds through the harbor and over through that bank parking lot, because there's the big crates in those parking lots that go down and right down into the drink. So I did pick up a lot of hairnets out of those. So that's something that would be good to run by your crew.
I will definitely do that, and thank you for bringing that, because that's a problem around the plan as well.
Don't behind the Fish and Game building, because I got to clean that area.
Put them in Jeff's truck.
I'll make sure to put that. Either way, I'll put that in our end-dock stuff for all of our
and it's
common
maybe
folks.
something, you know, after the snow is done, we can throw a bench back. We're going to put a bench close to the building. We're going to pull that one out. We have it there all summer. Talk to Jeff, and he's okay if I just put the, you know, the portable bench out there by the bathroom, which attracts all the homeless people, which, no, I mean, when you're looking for ways to cut funds, because nobody wants to pay their taxes and stuff. Well,
It's like, I don't
it's
not go there.
it just takes a lot of time. I mean, my night guy is, not going to be happy because now he's down in the South Harbor trying to produce his rounds and you got stuff going on. I mean, everything from making babies to, having their sandwich. I mean, we could pull it out every night and put it back in every morning so you could come down. But I mean, that's the reality of it.
I understand.
You call the police and God bless them, but they're in another part of town or they're monitoring Alaska Airlines and they can't come down half an hour later and it's too late. It's not, so I'm out there yelling at people constantly and kicking them out. And it's, at some point you just pull the bench.
No, I understand.
And that's what happens.
I know, I understand.
And it's funny, but it's not really funny when it's the same people that are abusing it. And that's what it comes down to, it's abuse.
Yep.
And at some point, you can't.
Do you still get people underneath the Harbor Shack?
Not under the Harbor Shack because we don't have a stairwell anymore, but we get them under the South Harbor where the stairwell goes down by the
Yeah.
grid.
Oh, underneath.
We get
yeah.
regularly, we get calls.
Easy with those trees. I planted those.
Well, the trees are going to be the next thing that comes out. And
Yeah,
I'm
they're
going
getting
to
too
get a
big.
lot of flack about
Yeah.
that because for everybody that says they don't like them, we got 10 people that love them. And they're breaking up the sidewalk, they're the leaves, and it's going to
It's the berries and the birds.
Yeah,
You
well,
know,
sure,
that's-
from your opinion, but it's also damaging the heart, the
Yeah.
cement is
There's
starting
plenty
to.
of trees on there.
Yeah. So.
Shrubbery. Yeah. Okay,
Usually
well,
more to the story.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, to entertain a motion to adjourn, unless somebody else has another discussion item.
There was one comment I wanted to make, just to get back, or question, I guess, really to get back to the parking thing, is that, I'm just trying to brainstorm an idea, but if we were to implement some kind of a permit or get jurisdiction of the bulkhead parking, then maybe we could give people that actually have moorage in the harbor a permit so they could park. Because there's nothing more frustrating, you're down in your engine room, working on your boat, you're stressed, you're 15 minutes over, and then you go up and you got a ticket. And that's just, it's like,
All you did was just pay $10 for the day to keep parking.
but implement some method so that, there's nothing worse than seeing a ticket in your windshield,
Just saying.
So that's what I'm saying, is implement some kind of a permit so that, you can go park your car there.
It's still cheap parking, yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, that's it, you could put a request, there's, literally probably 12 spots there, that would be really handy to have them closed to
127 of us.
to 127 of you, of which I still have to employ somebody to monitor it, and pretty much that's going to be because you're going to get flack from the businesses like Napa, and other Main Street businesses. So just, I don't know how far it'll go, but
Yeah.
sure. I mean, we ask for it every 5-6 years, so far time to ask for it.
I got on the assembly thinking I could get it with Bartlett. Got on the highway with it.
No. You just held to a higher
I don't know
standard.
what you gotta be to get that.
You need a
Like
little,
making it work for the
a
harbor.
blue tag hanging from your mirror, then you got your own spot.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Thanks for all the time, you guys.
Can I get some help putting these on the table?
Yeah. Or, get some help eating some of that stuff.
Back against that long wall in that building. In that room.
Hold on, I'm gonna go and get some food. That parking thing, turn the mics off? Yeah, come there. Closer, but try to. You always, you can struggle, have parking. earmarked, you know. But anyway, she worked hard on it. And one biggest thing against was at that library, there, you know, that building out there and stuff. Getting people to even think about parking. I have no problem with it. The problem is that 24-hour.
Be there for 3 days.
Yeah. Those liveaboards are the worst. They are you know, like the Johnsons, they have 4 vehicles. I chase them down all the time. And exactly, I hit them all the time. Come on, that's why we implemented it. And she came up here and said, she had the death to call me on the carpet on that. I'm a liveaboard, I'm paying $50 extra. I deserve to have a parking spot, my own parking. I'm like, hey, listen.
Okay. You and I want to adjourn to Lee's and see if we can petition our next move.
There you go.
So, why don't you just text me?
I don't know. That's why I really want to be able to build that parking lot. Then you're talking, you know, serious 50%, and then you can shut it down for parking. Still, you know,